Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and I'd like to share a secret with you. I've always kind of wanted an HK416. Not because it's an H&K, but because it has a 10.5-inch barrel and an externally piston-driven system, and that can lend itself very well with certain environmental constraints in mind. Well, looking at the parts for one of these, a complete upper for an HK416 can go in excess of $4,000, and that's a little outside my budget. So thinking logically about this, two of the main designers that helped HK with its design afterwards went to SIG and helped SIG design the 5.16 rifle. So the 5.16 and HK416 both share an awful lot of different designs in common. Since then, SIG has stopped producing and selling the 5.16 rifle, and we've seen this with the parts pricing going way up. For example, just a few weeks ago on Gunbroker, a used 10.5-inch barreled upper, just the upper, went for over $1,000. So I started making some calls to local gun shops to see what they had in stock, and I ended up finding a new in box upper 5.16 with a 14.5-inch barrel for around $650. So now I'd like to show you some of the different internals and designs of these rifles to show you why I think they're a really great value. And then we're going to take the barrel out, chop it down to 10.5 inches to more closely mimic what a HK416 has to offer.
Just start. We'll finish.
Quick finishing pass, not too bad. And I'll probably do that.
Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. He's safe and have fun on the range.
Looking at the 5.16 lower, you'll notice they didn't use a mil-spec lower at all. They have lightning cuts in front of the magazine well and a thicker fence to stop the magazine from being released unintentionally. The grip that they use features a trap door, and there's QD sling mounts on both the right hand and left hand sides. They also have an ambidextrous magazine release and an extended latch for the bolt hold open. You'll also notice that they didn't use a hammer that's mil-spec either. The weight that they use for the buffer is an H weight, and there's an interesting spring retention system to keep constant tension in between the upper and lower receivers. Let's look at the upper. The receiver is a standard mil-spec upper with a very, very heavy-duty quad rail. The gas block is of steel construction and has a bayonet lug, and it is pinned to the cold hammer forged chrome-lined 1-in-7 twist barrel, and in my experience, these barrels are very, very accurate. The bolt carrier is nitrided, and the tombstone is part of the bolt carrier. You'll notice various lightning cuts on this bolt carrier as well, along with a tapered back to aid in bolt carrier tilt. The charge handle is just a normal mil-spec charge handle, and this only is on the Generation 1s. The second generations have ambidextrous. The gas piston, you'll notice, has piston rings as well as a return spring. And there are 3 gas positions on this for regular running, suppressed, or extreme conditions. These rifles also feature a pin in the barrel extension that supports the extractor. This aids in a more reliable extraction in adverse conditions by not allowing the extractor to lift over the rim of the cartridge. Just a few more things I wanted to mention about this upper receiver. You'll notice there's a little area of metal that's been removed here, and that's to interface with a locating tab on the quad rail, so when it's tightened down it can't rotate left or right. On the quad rail itself, it also has some QD sling attachment points at the front and the rear at both the 3 and 9 o'clock positions on the rail. They've also drilled out the gas tube port and actually threaded it and put a nice brass bushing in there to support the gas piston that goes through there. The only other thing that's different than a normal AR-15 is that the barrel nut is actually smaller in diameter, so that means that you won't be able to use a normal AR-15 armorer's wrench. This nut can be taken off with a multitude of different special tools, but I just happen to use a Matco WW897. We got the barrel off in the lathe, and now let's shorten it up. now that the upper's all back together, you can see what it looks like. You'll notice that I used some UTG low profile flip up sights, and these are actually really nice sights. They're not made in China, they're made in Taiwan. So if you want some higher quality, lower budget flip up sights that are actually made out of metal, I'd highly recommend them. I also put a Trijicon Reflex RX30 on top of an arms mount on it, and that will pretty much do it for the upper. So finding a lower for this particular build proved harder than I thought it was going to be. SIG generally doesn't sell stripped lowers, and especially not for the 516. I did find a couple of examples at AIM Surplus, but both examples, one was titanium, the other one was burnt bronze, and they were both over $200. So I went with what I felt would be the next best thing. This is an Aero Precision M4E1 all-forged lower, and you can see that the fit and the finish on this lower is absolutely immaculate. You'll notice that there's a generous bevel on the magazine well, and I used a Magpul MOE grip for this. I used an SB Tactical SB A4 brace on this, and the buffer weight I used is an H range, so that means 3.8 ounces. I used an ambidextrous safety on this and an ambidextrous magazine release. The trigger I used is a Hyperfire Elite, and there is, generally speaking, no take-up whatsoever on this trigger. So, let's pin this upper and lower together and see what we got. So here's what our finished build looks like, and I think it came out really good looking. And we came far, far under budget, as opposed to if we were to source all the parts for an HK416, that would have been around maybe $65, maybe $7,500 mark. With this one, we came way, way under that. I really can't wait to get this out to the range and maybe try some training scenarios with it, maybe some inside, outside vehicle training stuff, shooting around barriers, things of that nature, where having maybe a shorter barrel to get around stuff would really be advantageous to have something that's a little smaller like this. So remember that loose is fast, brakes only slow you down, and you don't have to break the bank to build yourself a quality firearm. Remember to be safe and have fun on the range, and we'll see you next time.